Kia ora, nau mai, haere mai, whakatau mai rā. I'm just going to begin with the opening karakia. Some of you may know it, so you can join in. Kia ora. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tunga, kia mā kinekine ki ita, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi ake ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei Māori ora. Kei ngā maunga whakahi, ngā awa tipua, ngā moana tawhito, e māha ana ka mihi rā ki te ahi ka o te whenua nei, te atiawa, tēnā koutou. Ko waiau, ko tainui tuaka, ko Ngāti Toa Rangatira, Ngāti Raukawa, Ngāti Tūkorihe ahau. Kei te mahi ahau mō Worldwide Fund for Nature Aotearoa. Ko au te kaihautu tai au, ko tākuta Aroha Spinks tōku ingoa. Tēnā tātou e manawa, titi nei ki ngā kaupapa hāpai i te tai au. Mau ki tēnā, māku ki tēnei, ki wai o te kiti. Nō reira tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. So after that brief karakia, just opening our workshop today, paid respects to the proud mountains and supernatural rivers and ancient seas for tangata whenua, te atiawa, the fire keepers of this land. Introducing myself, and the purpose today ended with an appropriate proverb, which can be translated as, with us and to us, the enduring tenacity to continue to elevate all that is important for our environment, taking us all in our place and carrying this kaupapa together. The Worldwide Fund for Nature would like to acknowledge Te Papa Atawhai, Department of Conservation, who we've been working with over the past 18 months on this Tai Tōrua concept, the early webinar series, as well as these workshops. We greatly appreciate our open partnership with DOC and would like to extend our warm and heartfelt thanks to them, particularly Debbie Freeman, Karen Bell and Sam Thomas, and a special mention to my team, Lucy Jacob, Esther Lees and Carolyn Aguilar. Without them, this workshop simply wouldn't be happening. Acknowledging all of you in this room, those who have travelled to attend, those who represent communities as well as volunteer organisations, those taking time out of your jobs to be here today. It's an important kaupapa. One message that we hear repeatedly is, and it still doesn't seem to have had impact that we would hope, is that the ocean cannot wait. Our blue planet supports life as we know it, and for too long we've taken it for granted, without thinking about the consequences it might be to the ocean itself, or myriads of life and us in the moana. Now, people in the world are certainly starting to take notice and understand a lot more about the impacts and implications of climate change on our moana, and our future is not looking good, as you'll hear a lot more about this morning. Yet our ocean buffers against the impacts of climate change, which is why it is vitally important to find ways to reduce our planetary footprint whilst building ocean resilience to withstand those impacts that we know are coming. The enthusiasm for this workshop and the distance that people have travelled to be here is a testament to the fact that you will take this issue seriously and you're prepared to come together today and tomorrow to look for solutions. We hope that we can effectively and productively have conversations throughout the days and collectively address these critical issues with respect for each other and the diverse backgrounds that we all represent. It's then our role to take that further and amplify those messages. WWF's vision is for people to thrive in harmony with nature. We firmly believe this is possible, but only if we work together. Together it is possible to look towards a better future for all of us and our future generations. I'm just going to finish with another pau. Whai a te kahurangi ki te tuoho koe, me he maunga teite. Kia ora. I'd like to ask Dr. Kayla Kingdon-Bebb to come up and talk from the top.
Atamare e koto, he mihi nui, he mihi mana, kia koto katoa, ena mana whenua, taranaki whanui, te atiawa, ngati toa, tēnā koto. Ena mana, ena reo, reo rangatira mā, tēnā koto, tēnā koto, tēnā koto katoa. Ko Canada te whenua o kutipuna, kei te whanganui atara tokukanga I naine, kei te papa Atawhai o I mahiana. Ko Kayla Kingdon-Bebb tōku ingoa. Nō reira, kia ora hui hui mai tātou. Morning, everybody. As Karen mentioned, my name is Kayla and I'm the Director of Policy at DOC, Te Papa Atawhai. Really pleased to see you all here. It's such a special opportunity to have people from different backgrounds and walks of life, different interest groups come together on this important kaupapa, as Aroha already said this morning. So I just want to acknowledge the time that you've taken to spend with us today. I understand that this workshop today follows on from a successful webinar series that DOC and WWF ran last year during COVID. And the engagement that we had with this webinar series demonstrated the value and connection that New Zealanders place on the marine environment, but also the desire to discuss opportunities to strengthen these connections and to address some of the threats we are seeing at the Moana. I'd like to express my thanks to WWF for helping us organize these workshops and also for bringing what will be a global policy perspective to the conversations that progress today. Many of you will know, and I'm sure it will be no surprise, that 2021 is seen as a make or break year for the global community to collectively act on climate change. This decade is seen as the last chance to avoid catastrophic climate disruption, and countries are being urged to substantially increase their mitigation and adaptation action ambitions to build resilience. Te Mana o Te Taio, the Aotearoa New Zealand Biodiversity Strategy 2020 sets goals for biodiversity contribution towards emissions mitigation and adaptation through nature-based solutions. Te Papa Atawhai, DOC, has an active and growing role to play in climate change mitigation and adaptation. Last year, we released DOC's Climate Change Adaptation Action Plan, which outlines a number of actions we will be taking to address climate change. I'll also acknowledge that we have a speaker joining us later today, I believe, from the Department of Oceans, Fisheries and Oceans Canada, Hilary Ibe. And I guess I will opine to say that I think Canada and Aotearoa New Zealand have a lot in common, including me, but particularly in the space of marine protection and conservation. And one of the things I've been really interested in, and I think would be a really fruitful discussion for you all to engage Hilary in, is Canada's approach to Indigenous protected areas, including marine protection initiatives. So some of you will know there's been some quite novel developments in the last few years, both from a terrestrial and a marine ecosystem perspective. And in fact, some of those initiatives like Guai Hanas really apply a mountains to sea approach to protecting and restoring. So I'm sure you'll have an interesting conversation with Hilary when she joins us. We know that marine biodiversity protection measures can help generate resilience to climate change, and marine protected areas are in fact one of the tools we have to achieve this. When designed smartly, well enforced and well managed, MPAs are increasingly recognized as a cornerstone of climate action. Not only do healthy ecosystems maintain mitigation functions through the biological pump, but they have crucial co-benefits for food security, coastal resilience, and biodiversity protection. I'm sure you'll have, I've seen the agenda and it looks super interesting. I'm really upset I actually can't be here for both days, but I'm sure the team will be taking copious notes and sharing all the outcomes of the workshop with me later on. I just want to welcome you all again, haere mai, and I hope you have some really wonderful generative conversations over the next 2 days. Kia ora.
Okay, and welcome to those few people who've just come in the door. Has everyone got an agenda? If you haven't got one, do you want to just, there's some just down the back of the room. If anyone hasn't got one, you could perhaps just grab it now. I'm Karen Bell and I'm your facilitator for today. And I'll just go through what the agenda's covering today. So first of all, we're going to have some scene setting. Dr. Aroha Spinks is coming back to the podium. We've got Lucy Jacob and Dr. Debbie Freeman coming to speak about various aspects to set the scene. We then have a session on climate change impacts on our marine environment. Dr. Vonda Cummings, Dr. Matt Dunn and Dr. Libby Liggins. We're having morning tea at 10:30 and then we've got a panel Q&A discussion. And we have Carolyn Lindquist is going to be then speaking about best practice for future-proofing MPA design for a climate-changing world. We then have Sheridan Waitai speaking from Te Mana o Rangatahuia, and lunch is at 12 noon. We start again the afternoon at 1 p.m. with Hillary's presentation from Canada, and that will be an online thing, so we're hoping the technology will be kind to us. After that, we have Dr. Matt Pinkerton speaking about incorporating climate change into MPA management and monitoring in the Ross Sea. We have a breakout session and report back this afternoon before afternoon tea at 3 p.m. We have a facilitated discussion about recommendations to take forward from this workshop at 3:30 p.m. this afternoon, and we'll then talk about next steps and evaluate how we think the day went. Now, when you came in, some of you were asked, I don't think we quite got everyone, because some of you came in a little bit later, we asked people to write on a post-it note what they wanted to get out of today. So there's some post-it notes just on the edge of the table at the back and some pens. And if at some stage in the first part of the morning, you could just write down on a piece of paper what you want to get out of today and pop it on the back wall, and we'll revisit that later today. So has anyone got any questions about the agenda before I move on to the health and safety matters that I'm bound to cover? No? Okay. So the toilets are down to the right, down the corridor and to the right, and there's a workshop also going on in the room opposite. So no one's to go into that room at the end of the corridor, slightly to the left, please. There are more toilets down a level because it might get quite congested with 2 workshops happening. If there is an emergency, if there's an earthquake, we do drop, cover, hold. If there's a fire, our meeting place is just out here in the rain. And if there is any other emergency, such as a tsunami warning or anything, we have to go up to the War Memorial, and the people from here will lead the way. Any questions about any of the housekeeping matters? It would be great if people could turn their phones off or put them on silent, please, so we don't have interruptions for our speakers. Anything else anyone wants to cover before we get started? Our speakers. Okay, so I'd like to welcome Aroha, Lucy and Debbie up to the front to sit in these chairs up here. And we're having Aroha first, then Lucy and then Debbie.
Kia ora anō. He kapiti hono, he tātai hono. That which is drawn together becomes an unbroken line. The living are guided by sayings and experiences and examples of our ancestors. I begin with nothing. Te koroia, the formless void. That which through spans of time evolved to create our universe. According to Tukurehe traditions, 2 elements, one female named Puna and one Hane, a male, search longingly for each other in a desire to meet. Finally, drawn together, some say that Hane and Puna disturbed the heavenly slumbers of Ranginui and Papatuanuku, and as a consequence, they gave birth to a number of children. On Papatuanuku, children propagated, firstly, all things that live in the sea, then the rivers and land. From a te ao Māori perspective, the creation of our universe, deities and their progeny, means that we are all inextricably linked and tied to all things natural, as well as supernatural, through ancestral connections. Those familiar with the narrative are aware that Tāne Mahuta reached apart Ranginui and Papatuanuku from their loving embrace. Tāne Mahuta, god or guardian of the forests, sculpted the first human, a woman, from the clay of Papatuanaku, and thus her name, Hine Ahuone, the maiden, emerged out of dust. With the aid of a hungi, Tani Mahuta then infused his breath, Maori, life force, and she came into life. Based on Māori genealogy, people have vested interest in the care of family members. Māori see themselves as part of nature. This view is central to Māori perception of the world. Humans are intimately connected to the world and not separate from it. Those that are aware of our creation story continues that there are many number of events that occurred, but one major battle between Tāwhiri Mātia and Tangaro is appropriate for our kaupapa today. Tangaro and Hine Moana, gods and guardians of the ocean, a realm that is considered to be a source and foundation of life that can be life-giving and calm, but also dangerous, destructive, and deadly. Māori have always regarded the ocean as a taonga, a priceless treasure of spiritual importance. Our ancestors were sea voyagers that navigated their ways to our shores from great distances across the Pacific Ocean. Māori and our Polynesian ancestors often lived close to the sea and relied on it for food and resources. As mentioned, it is thought to be where life and living creatures began. Such a myriad of life that exists within it. The ocean is just like the land, water, sky, and interconnected parts of our environment that were always respected. To defile such areas were unthinkable to my ancestors. My ancestors took a very thorough scientific approach, one might say, to maintaining the well-being of our natural world, Te Taiao, and finding our place within it. Living within our ancestral land and seascapes, we made esoteric observations and developed ways in which to utilise and nurture our world. It's often referred to as kaitiaki today, viewed quite simply as guardianship. We shouldn't need to have such a custodial mind set to preserve and enhance what is best in our world around us. Many Māori also see the reverse, that the deities and their progeny and the natural world are our kaitiaki, guardians that sustain us. They are the true kaitiaki of the universe. We may just be a blip on the evolution of species. As Māori ancestors observed the sun, ocean, trees, mountains, waterways, land, stars, skies, weather, pretty much everything animate and inanimate within Te Taiao, patterns became apparent, predictable, so did changes to some degree. As one example of the water cycle, simplified here as evaporation, condensation, and precipitation, can be seen as tears of ranginui, flowing as a gift back to Papatuanaku, filling the creeks and rivers with life so that earth can continue. The rivers meander from the mountains back to Tangaro, and the cycle begins again. It could also be considered the beating heart, the circulatory system of life as we know it. It therefore seems reasonable that if, just like the human body, links in the chain is damaged and diseased, then it will have adverse impacts on all the other parts of the links, holding this amazing universe together. Our ocean, our atmosphere, our planet, all our related species are suffering due to the impacts of people, and we need to give back to those kaitiaki who look after us. Interestingly, these climate change predictions for the future, tears from rangi, strong winds from Tawhiti, and sea level rise from Tangaro are coming. Teach us another lesson, perhaps. Western science is another method of understanding our environment, now often drawing on interdisciplinary, holistic, interrelated understandings, as well as Indigenous knowledge. The traditional approach and principle of interconnectedness and supernatural awareness is still very important to Māori and meaningful today. This distinction is important as a means of understanding our worldview, orientation brokered in the concept of kaitiakitanga and guardianship, While Māori also, like me, participate in Western scientific monitoring, those activities should not be considered as compromising or diminishing the centrality of mātauranga, Māori knowledge, kaupapa, our values, and tikanga, our practices. Conservation, protection, restoration activities are all opportunities to reciprocate to the atua, guardians, and all our other related species on Earth. Numerous examples and research exist throughout Aotearoa of how Te Ao Māori and Pākehā knowledge traditions can coexist and work alongside each other for the betterment of Te Taiao, our moana, and future. Co-management based on Māori and Pākehā understandings and true to Tiriti or Waitangi partnership is yet another unseen potential that we could see expand in the future. So we were just mentioning on the intergenerations and generations to come, my little 9-year-old son, Kinui, asked me what I was doing while I was preparing this speech. When I told him, he said, "Tell them this, Mum. The moana has so much life in it, but people have put so much pollution into it in Ranginui. Fish are starting to die. All I'm asking you is to better look after the moana." So I'm going to finish with a pau and whakatauki that means we should work together for the betterment and well-being of everyone. E mahi tahi tātou, mo te oranga o te katoa.